Hello and welcome to TV Cruise Channel's Guide to Cruising Alaska. I'm Julie Peasgood, and in this programme we're taking you on a journey of discovery to one of the world's most popular cruise regions. How would you like to experience the untamed snowcaps of Alaska, marvel at the vast icy blue Hubbard Glacier, or take a helicopter ride to see the spectacular Juneau ice field? Well, someone who has is travel guru Simon Calder. Simon, it's on my wish list big time. I've never been to Alaska. I've been to Iceland, Greenland, seen the Northern Lights, never Alaska. For anybody whose geography might be a bit challenged or rusty, I know mine is at times, it's the little strip of land to the left of Canada.
Well, it's quite a big,
right, the big
patch of land, yes. It's the other states are known as the lower 48, and of course you have the 50th state, Hawaii, but Alaska is the big one. It is, if you can imagine the North American continent, you've got the big bulky US, you've got the even bigger Canada, second biggest country in the world after Russia, and then you've got over to the left Alaska, which itself used to be part of Russia until they sold it quite cheaply to the Americans, and it's mostly a great giant slab of wilderness. But crucially for cruising, you've got the Aleutian Islands, which stretch down to the east over towards Russia, and you've also got quite a lot of the state which follows the Pacific seaboard down the coast and actually gets kind of halfway to Vancouver in Canada. And I must say that is actually the part of Alaska, the bit that's very, very close to Canada, that a lot of cruises will concentrate on, not least because it's got great ports of call, and more practically you can get quite happily between your starting point, which tends to be well, not Anchorage but quite close to there, we'll come on to that into a moment, and Vancouver or sometimes Seattle. It's a beautiful way to spend a week, and increasingly accessible for British cruisers for one simple reason, which is a new flight that began a couple of years ago from Reykjavik in Iceland through to Anchorage, Alaska. And that suddenly meant that the time it took and the price that it cost to get there basically halved. You can start off from London, from Manchester, from Glasgow, and 10 hours later you can be in Alaska with a quick change of planes in Reykjavik.
Fantastic.
And that completely opened up the place. Before that you had to fly to San Francisco or to Seattle and then get another flight. It's all very expensive and long-winded. Now it's really easy, and it's, I think, the most promising and exciting part of the world that I know.
Great, and it makes much more sense, doesn't it, Reykjavik? Would you go to Vancouver?
Yes, and when I took an Alaska cruise and I timed it specifically with these new flights, it was very straightforward. You get what's called an open jaw flight. Of course, many people who go cruising will do that. You fly into one city, out from another, and on the same airline you could very easily buy a ticket saying, I want to go to Anchorage, Alaska in this direction and come back from Vancouver, Canada in the other. Perfect.
Or you can combine it presumably with, I don't know, more travelling around Canada, visit the train ride the Rockies or whatever.
And we've talked about this before. It is such a fantastic opportunity to be able to combine the best of both worlds. So you've got, for example, the fantastic city of Vancouver itself, well worth spending 48 hours in, and the starting point for the Trans-Canadian, one of the world's great train rides taking you across the Rockies all the way into Toronto.
Excellent. Okay, but let's focus back on Alaska. Presumably cruising there, it's seasonal.
Oh, highly seasonal, yeah. And you're not going to see much that's going before the start of June, and you're not going to see much that's happening beyond September. And indeed by September most of the ships are making their way down the west coast on a final voyage calling into Vancouver, but then probably heading down to the San Francisco Bay Area, maybe down to Los Angeles, ready for their winter season, which might be on the Pacific coast of Mexico, might even be going through the Panama Canal depending on the size of the ship.
Okay, so what are the best months to go?
Well, the best month is probably, in terms of climate, late July, August. Okay. That's when it tends to be warmest. However, in terms of absolute intensity, June is best, because you're going to experience, particularly, of course, the third week of June, Midsummer's Day, that is when you're going to get the greatest benefit from the fact that you're close to the Arctic Circle and it's not going to get dark for very long. So I'd say June, but the weather can be a little bit unpredictable, and once you get into September it can also get a little bit shaky. But of course June, September is when you're going to get better prices than July and August. It is very, even within the short season, it's quite seasonal in terms of pricing, if you see what I mean.
Okay, and temperatures, you know, what are they likely to be? Are you talking completely different gear? You're talking ski gear and...
You're talking in that old phrase, 4 seasons in one day. I quite happily spent quite a lot of time just like this. You know, you could happily wear shorts, and I did, in fact, in the state capital, there's a fantastic city walk you can do into some lovely wilderness. And by the time I got to the top of that, I was really, you know, just in t-shirt and shorts. I was well warm, but it also, particularly if you're getting up close and personal with the glaciers, or glaciers, doesn't matter, both of them work. You know, you're going to want to have some good wet weather gear, and certainly I did a couple of pre-cruise days in the Anchorage area, and it was pretty bitter. You know, for the middle of summer, it was cold and wet, windy, and you needed to be well prepared. But of course, the good thing about cruising is you've got room to pack away all your different
that is one of the great things, definitely. Even the smallest seeming stateroom or cabin actually has got great storage, I've always found. What are the main cruise lines that go to Alaska? Okay,
well, it tends to be the US companies. So Princess, Holland America, both of which are part of the same company, of course, but then you've got Norwegian, will be doing some stuff there, Royal Caribbean, and then smaller companies, so Regent Seven Seas, for example, will do different itineraries from the big ships very often, because they can get into ports that the others miss out. So there's plenty of choice and competition out there, and of course it's competition that keeps everybody honest and keeps the prices very manageable.
Yes, very healthy. Would you favour the smaller, more intimate ships because they gain greater access in, you know, to the places you might want to go?
Given unlimited budget, I most certainly would, for exactly that reason. However, you can get astonishingly good value on the mid-range vessels. So I was on the Coral Princess, and there were 4 of us, family of 4, and it worked out for a week about £600 each, which, considering everything you get and the option for if you were trying to visit all these places without a cruise ship, it would cost thousands and thousands of pounds. I thought was very good value, and you wouldn't get anything, of course, in that price range if you were on a smaller, more personalised ship. So it's always a trade-off, as with so many things in cruising and indeed in life.
Yes. And the expedition ships, of course, are more expensive than they go up in price again. How long are we talking, Simon, for, I don't know, a typical Alaskan cruise?
Well, the absolute standard model is 1 week, and it's a really, really good week, and it starts off... Well,
tell us what you do.
Okay, well, the thing is, you fly to Anchorage, Alaska, the biggest city, not the capital, we'll get to that later, which is actually a very engaging an unusual place to be. It's really well worth spending time there. It's, you know, it's not the most cultural or civilized city. It's a bit of a frontier feeling to it, but it's great to explore. I then built in a couple of days in a place called Alyeska, which is a ski resort during the winter, even though it's almost at sea level, but it's got some lovely facilities, fantastic walking, and great places to stay, which are kind of really, you feel as though you're out in the wilderness staying in a log cabin, although there is a kind of a fast food restaurant just down the end of the street. So that worked very well. But the cruise ship doesn't actually start from Anchorage, even though you'd think Anchorage, that must be a cruise port, but no. Most ships will begin in a place called Whittier, which is about an hour and a half outside of Anchorage. I say about because it's a really weird cruise port. You've never been anywhere like this. It's a former US Navy base, maybe it's a present US Navy base, but anyway, it's very much a military feel, and the way you get to it is so weird. They've got a train line which goes there, and many people will actually go on the Alaska Railroad, which is a really exciting way to get there. you've got a road that goes there, but they all go through the same tunnel to get into Whittier, and it can only be one way. So either it's a train going through in one direction or the other, or it's vehicles going one way or the other, and they have kind of 15 minutes for cars going that way, 15 minutes for cars going the other way. It's really weird, and even when you get through to Whittier and you think, well, because of course, what's there not to like about any cruise port anywhere in the world? Well, Whittier, there's quite a lot not to like.
It challenges you.
Yeah, you wouldn't. There's nothing great about it. At all, so you're very pleased to get on the ship, and then you're very likely to get 3 days at sea. There's not really anywhere to call in along the way, at least on a big ship. And the great thing is that although you're at sea, you pretty much constantly during the hours of daylight, which are very long, you've got views of the beautiful coastline. But then on about day 2, you go in and explore the Hubbard Glacier, and this is an amazing wall of ice. And on these ships you tend to have very good kind of oceanographers, naturalists, people who are very good at explaining what's going on, and they will kind of guide the captain in, and you really, on a big ship, 2,500 passengers, you'll be getting really close to this wall of ice. You'll get chunks falling off, not doing anything dangerous at all, but making this astonishing thundering noise. It's so exciting, and again, very difficult to imagine yourself in that position if you weren't on a cruise ship.
Yes.
So that's very exciting.
The Hubbard Glacier.
The Hubbard Glacier.
The noisy Hubbard Glacier.
The very noisy and very exciting Hubbard Glacier. And then you tend to make your way further down the coast, and then inland along an inlet which takes you to Skagway, which is generally the first sort of proper port of call. What an exciting place that is. You're only about 20 miles from Canada at that stage. You are very close to another country. You've also got an amazing railroad that starts from there and winds into Canada, but what you've also got is the start of the trail that took everybody to the Yukon Gold Rush. It's really quite extraordinary. In the late 19th century, gold was discovered, and basically anybody on the west coast of the US immediately got the first steamship they could to as close as they could, which was either Skagway or a fascinating village which is just 10 miles away and you can go to very easily as when you go to Skagway, called Dai, and from there they would go over the mountains, incredibly badly equipped, to explore, effectively to try to get to the Klondike where the gold was being discovered. And it's a place rich in history, sadly deep in tragedy as well. But Skagway has been preserved almost as a frontier town, and you've got a great saloon you can go into and sit down at a bar and have some whiskey, of course if you're over 21, this being America, and you can also go to national park properties where they will tell you more about the Klondike experience, and it's also breathtakingly beautiful because, like the whole of the coast of Alaska, it's wonderfully corrugated, mostly unspoilt. You've got pines reaching down to the shore. You've got great snow-capped mountains behind, and from time to time you've got glaciers which are just reminding you of the immense power of the planet. Wow,
you are whetting my appetite so much. I'm on the point of booking it, Simon. Don't go away, and please stay with us. We'll be back discovering more about cruising Alaska in just a few minutes. Hello and welcome back to TV Cruise Channel's Guide to Cruising Alaska, where travel guru Simon Calder is still with me. Simon, we got to Skagway and the Klondike, the Gold Rush. Where next? Oh, well, next is actually not very far away, and it will be a short night's cruise to get you to Juneau. Which is, of course,
the capital of the state of Alaska, even though it's by no means the largest city. That is, of course, Anchorage. And furthermore, it's the only US state capital without any terrestrial connection. So you can't go there by road or rail. You have to fly in or go by sea. And like any American state capital, it's got lots of kind of official buildings. Parts of it aren't so attractive, but there is this great escape into the hills that back onto Juneau, and that's really, really well worth doing, as is the astonishing Mendenhall Glacier. Now, that is something you can get to actually on a public bus, or you can get a cheap trip on a tour. Most cruise lines will do a kind of an express trip out there, because you go to a visitor centre and then you just walk for a mile or so and you are suddenly confronted with this amazing glacier and a lake that opens up before you, in which are floating around little icebergs, and you can kind of wander out and pick up an iceberg. It's not going to be Titanic-sized iceberg, but it is so exciting, so beautiful, so accessible. And other people are going to be going off on helicopter trips or on float planes, seaplanes to you and me, and going off and exploring some of the great sites there. But you know, you can just hop on the local bus and see something which will be absolutely magical. And you're also going to start seeing signs of the Russianness of the Alaskan coast. This was an extension of Siberia, effectively. So you have got beautiful Russian Orthodox churches. There's one in Juneau. You've got more in the town of Sitka, which is nearby, but that is not generally a port of call for the bigger ships. It's the sort of place you would go to on Regent Seven Seas, for example, and that's you get much more in tune with the kind of the local culture of the Aboriginal people, but also the Russian influence as well. So it's a fascinating place.
What an exotic mix.
It is very, very exotic is exactly the right word for it.
Gosh, and then after that,
Ketchikan is generally the next stop along. Now it's an interesting place where they do all sorts of things. They lay on things such as a lumberjack performance.
Yes,
exactly.
I'd love a lumberjack performance.
Well, you have never seen anything like this. You've got strapping men in lumberjack shirts who will with enormous axes, who will perform amazing things, climbing up trees. They will create bits of furniture from just chopping up lumber. It is quite magical. It does really kind of connect you with the logging history of Alaska, and it's all done in very good form. It's not very expensive. It's one of these things where the ship will sell you quite an expensive ticket for it, or you just go along and pay at the door, and you'll find that it's not so expensive after all. Good advice. It's also a lovely fishing port with a lot of character, and it's a beautifully located port as well. So there's lots of, if you like just exploring little lanes and all these beautifully painted houses and so on, it's a really lovely place to do that and kind of get one final taste of Alaska, because after that you're probably going to be sailing off, and many times the next stop will be Vancouver. It may be, if you're on a smaller ship particularly, you'll stop at Prince Rupert in Canada. I've been there. I like ports. I don't think I'll be rushing back there. And Port Hardy on Vancouver Island, which is a lovely remote seaport, and so good reason if you want to extend your trip and have longer than the sort of standard week. That's very good. And then you're sailing through the Inside Passage. You might want to really study the itinerary and the timings for this part, because you've got Vancouver Island, which is disconnected from the mainland by this Inside Passage. You can sail all the way down, and it's obviously disconnected from Vancouver itself, the city of Vancouver, and in fact it's about 400 miles long. I mean, it's roughly the size of England. Gosh. It's a huge island, but it's a great journey to make in good at least part of it in daylight, because it is absolutely marvellous and dramatic. And then finally you sail through the Georgia Strait into Vancouver, and you can't believe a week ago, having left this tiny, really quite dismal port of Whittier, that suddenly you are confronted with this beautiful widescreen Canadian city with skyscrapers and friendly people and everything on hand, and you moor pretty much in the city centre, and you can just spill off the ship and go off and explore this this wonderful city. So it's a great way to end, and that's one reason, by the way, I would strongly recommend that you make the journey from north to south rather than the other way around, because you do feel that it's a grand arrival rather than somewhere you're waving goodbye to from the aft deck of the ship. So well worth going north to south.
Very important. I can get that. And then you've got that wonderful contrast between all this nature and all of that you've been immersed in, down into a buzzing cosmopolitan city.
Yes, but one where nature is only on the doorstep anyway, and you can. It's a city where very, very close to the city you can find lots of kind of wild nature parks, and you've got the town of Whistler, of course, great winter sports centre not very far away. So it kind of feels like it's somewhere where your next adventure is going to be, whether that's exploring more of British Columbia or getting on the Canadian transcontinental train.
Wow.
Or indeed you can very happily hop on a train down to Seattle and explore that great city as well. So it's a place of possibilities, Vancouver.
And if somebody's watching and really, really wants to do one, any packing tip? Just a very practical question.
Yeah.
Any packing tip?
Well, normally I would say think of lay out everything you want to take and then halve it. In this case, I would say don't halve it. Just make sure you've got lots of layers. I know everyone says that, but if you're going somewhere cold and wet, which it is potentially, just make sure you've got good waterproofs and you've got lots of layers, and then hope it's going to be t-shirt and short weather, but you never know. You
never know, so prepare for the worst. Thank you, Simon. Fantastic again to talk to you. And thank you to you for watching. I'll see you again next time here on TV Cruise Channel. See you soon.